I do it because I get an opportunity to try and fix a world that I didn't break. And I've made incredible friendships doing it. It starts with each of us as an individual. And a lot of that starts with gratitude, personal accountability. Where it becomes bad is when it becomes toxic polarization. When we allow that polarization to drive an us versus them mentality. And oftentimes we tend to get ourselves stuck in these different silos, this us versus them mentality. So I'm not going to deceptively edit anything one of my guests says in a conversation with me to make it sound like what they said was something other than what they said. I'm a lot further in the hole than I am above ground when it comes to monetization.
Yeah.
If you've got an idea, if you've got something that you believe in up here and right here, just focus, do it, work your mission, and great things will happen.
Oh. Episode of my podcast story, we have Wilkinson, the passionate host of the Derate the Hate podcast. Wilk is on a mission to better the world one attitude at a time, sharing insights on personal accountability, gratitude, and civility. It's a background shaped by overcoming adversity, including childhood bullying and a challenging upbringing. Wilk has transformed his life through the lessons learned from his mistake, his unique perspective, and commitment to fostering understanding among different viewpoints makes his podcast a beacon of hope in a divisive world. He's here to share his inspiring journey on how he built his show from the ground up and how he's using it to encourage others to choose positivity and civility in their daily lives. Tell us your name, the name of your podcast, and what your podcast is about.
So I am Wilkinson from the Derate the Hate podcast. I'm here in Clearwater, Minnesota, United States of America, and I started the Derate the Hate podcast more than 5 years ago, talking about mindset, bettering the world one attitude at a time, and then what it's going to take to make this world a better place. It starts with each of us as an individual, and a lot of that starts with gratitude, personal accountability, and gradually started working my way into what a lot of people call the depolarization space, and so that's what I do. I try to better the world by bettering people's mindsets, bettering people's attitude, and then sometimes facilitating difficult conversations between people on contentious issues, and try to do it in a non-contentious way.
What was the inspiration that led to you starting the podcast?
The inspiration for what started my journey on the podcast? So a lot of it started with my own story. I was a very kind of a polarized and sometimes toxic person. I had a lot of anger, a lot of animosity for things that I had experienced in the course of my life, and spent a lot of my time mad and a lot of the I finally realized that a lot of the anger, a lot of the things that I was dealing with came back to how I was reacting to things that were outside of my control. And so I started the podcast, and well, I had been on my own journey to kind of detoxify my life and better my attitude, and found that was working, and it made things for me a lot better. So I figured that maybe if I shared some of that stuff with other people, that it would get better for them. And then also realizing that as each of us makes our life a better place, our internal world a better place, it makes the overall world a better place. And so that's why I started it.
Yeah, it's you started something that you wish you had to listen to, and now you share the world.
That's right. That's right.
Currently, the podcast, is it audio only or audio and video?
I do mostly on audio. We typically release the full version of the podcast on audio every week, one episode per week, and then I'll cut it up and drop random video clips and snips here and there, whether it be on YouTube or Twitter or LinkedIn, Facebook, X, or Facebook, Instagram, things like that.
Oh, okay. Was YouTube always part of the game, or Was it something you picked along the way?
So right at the beginning of the Derate the Hate podcast, I put out a couple videos trying different things, just messing around with video, trying to see what was see what that was like. I started doing more with YouTube more recently, probably the end of last year and throughout the beginning of this year. But it's been part of the deal for the whole journey, but didn't really become super active with it until in recent months.
Yeah. Cool. Now, look, if you look back at the podcast, when you started 5 years ago, and now that you've been doing the podcast for 5 years, how is the podcast doing with regard to the purpose of helping people become better?
Well, according to the feedback that I receive, Wisdom, it's done well. I mean, I get a lot of feedback saying, "Hey, you really helped me out through this thing," and I used use this that I picked up out of this episode to better my life in this way, or yeah, I heard something on your podcast the other day that really made me think differently about the way that I saw this particular issue. So I would say it's been very positive. It's helped me to gain some interesting notoriety, let's just call it that way, in different circles that I probably never would have been in. I've been able to speak at one of the world's most prestigious universities, and I've been on stages within some of the world's greatest thinkers and done some just incredible things. So yeah, it's been quite a journey.
Yeah.
Doing this podcast thing.
Yeah, it's lovely when we get to hear from the people that we create content for. And yeah, it's good to know that what we're doing is we're making a difference.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, making a difference is really the big thing for me, Wisdom, is the idea that if I'm doing this thing and if it helps one person through some hardship or some rough thing that they're dealing with, or if it helps one person, I'm not here to change people's minds so much as just to open their minds about different things. And so often in life we find ourselves stuck in these different certainties, and if something I say is able to help somebody look at that and say, well, was I exactly right on this? Was I right in my absolute certainty on this particular thing? Maybe I need to rethink that. And maybe they were right, but maybe they opened up their mind to the possibility that they could have been wrong. And what that did was that changed the trajectory of how they interact with people who don't agree with them. You see what I'm saying? So I think that's a hugely, hugely important thing, and something that's lacking in society today is people's ability to, look introspectively at where they're at on a particular thing, and then be able to engage with others that may not think the same way.
Yeah. I just I want us to go back a bit, right? When you started the podcast, was that like the first attempt of starting a podcast? What was it like? Was it easy, or was it like a new territory you're trying to like navigate?
That was it was definitely something completely foreign to me, something that I had never done before, something that I had never done anything like that. And yeah, if you go back to April of 2020 and listen to some of the things that I did right off the bat, it was, I mean, I had no idea what I was doing. It was just all learning on the fly, and just trying to figure it out as I went along, and made some short episodes where it was just me talking and trying to muddle my way through it, and I'm one who believes very strongly in the idea that every mistake we make is an opportunity for learning, and I've made a lot of mistakes in my life along the way. Podcasting is no different. I just, I still learn something new every day with them. I try different things. I work through different things. I try different programs, different platforms, different equipment, And yeah, it's been a learning process because yeah, 5 years ago I had no idea how this thing even worked. I couldn't even, 5.5 years ago, I couldn't even have told you how to get a podcast out there. And now I'm listened to in 98 countries every single week.
Oh,
So it's pretty wild, right? It's a very very different thing, but if you stick to it, you learn a lot of
yeah,
things.
yeah. Well, uh, currently, can you walk us through what's your workflow, how your podcast gets made, the behind the scenes of, from idea to,
So typically the idea is basically the theme,
okay.
right? I mean, the theme of my show centers around mindset and depolarization. So I invite
Yeah,
guests onto
so
my podcast.
sorry
A
to
lot of
interrupt you. For those that might be listening right now that don't know what you mean by depolarization, what does that mean? Can you like explain that first?
Yeah, so depolarization, whether it be political polarization. So polarization, if you think about polarization, the root word of that, right? Polarization is, you have just like on our Earth, right? You got a North Pole and a South Pole, complete opposite ends of the planet, North Pole and a South Pole. On any particular issue, you may have two sides to an issue, and then many places in between where it might be a spectrum where people are kind of on board with it, but not so much. Some people on one side may be very extreme about a particular issue. Some people on the other side may be very extreme to the opposite on the other side of that issue. But polarization in and of itself, a wisdom, is not a bad thing
Okay.
because it's good to have different perspectives on a particular topic. Where it becomes bad is when it becomes toxic
Ooh,
polarization, when we allow that polarization to drive an us versus them mentality. And oftentimes we tend to get ourselves stuck in these different silos, this us versus them mentality, and we start to, instead of actually engaging with those who have different mindsets, different thoughts than us, we start to other them and make them out to be some kind of evil monster. They're not just wrong, but they're stupid, they're evil, they're ignorant, that kind of thing. So working through that toxic polarization is an incredibly important process because while it's important to have differing perspectives, it's not good to have people who allow that to turn into a toxic division.
yeah.
So that toxic division is what we try to work through. And so back to the original question is, what's the theme of my show, and what's my workflow, and how do I kind of do my thing? Well, I try to find people that are either in that space or the work that they do can be applied to that space. And then whether they be an author or maybe an author of some kind of book, or a journalist who's been talking about a particular part of that thing, or a contentious topic, or an organization that works towards, you know, bridging divides and working through that toxic polarization kind of thing. And then I'll have a conversation with them. I take that conversation and then I'll put that in the can, and then I'll use well, you use Riverside to
Yeah.
record, right? Wisdom. That's the platform that I'm currently using
Okay.
as well, is Riverside. And I will take that recording, and I will listen to it. I'll run it through the Riverside software. I'll run it through another software. I'll text-based edit it to where I'll make sure that I get out the ums, the buts, the uncomfortable pauses, anything that didn't make sense. But I don't edit for content. I just edit for quality.
Okay.
So
What
the
what's
conversations that
what's
I
the
have with my
sorry,
guests.
you said something just now, which is I don't edit for content, I edit for quality. What's the difference between editing for content and quality before? Can you help us out?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I have a conversation with a guest, Wisdom, I expect that they are expecting what they say to come across the way that they
Okay.
said it, to the listeners, right? So I'm not going to deceptively edit anything one of my guests says in a conversation with me to make it sound like what they said was something other than what they said. So therefore, I do not edit the content of what they said, but I may edit it for quality. Like if there's or, you know, an this and an that, or I did this, but I did that, but I did this, but I did that, but, you know, I will take out the ums and the buts and the, you know, the little bit of stuttering here and there. I'm as guilty of that. I do that all the time as well. You know, so I'll edit out probably, you know, as much my misgivings when it comes to speaking as anything, as much as anybody else. But so yeah, I will never edit something for the content of the message, but I'll edit it for the quality of what it is, or you know, there may be something in there that just, you know, didn't really fit the theme of what we were saying, but I won't use any of a particular thing to make it sound like it was something that it wasn't.
I understand that.
Yeah. So yeah, once that's done, then I typically I will typically generate some show notes, partly through what I do, partly through the use of AI. I will make up some show notes. I'll put together an intro script to do a proper introduction for the guest or for the topic for that particular show. I'll record that intro script. I will add it to the typically I use Adobe Premiere Pro. Now I used Audacity for years, but now I use Adobe Premiere Pro for my audio editing, because it's a far superior platform for doing a lot of different things, and that's what I'll use to put together the episode. I put on my intro, I put on my outro, I normalize all the audios to make it sound the way that I want it to sound, and then I'll do the artwork. I typically do the artwork through either, well, Paint 3D used to be my go-to on that. Now I'm doing some of the artwork through creative design on what is it called? Adobe. I don't remember. Adobe something. Adobe Creative Studio. That might be. But I use a lot of different
Softwares.
a lot of different software, a lot of different programs to put it together. But yeah, I do. I typically do all my own production work. I line up my own guests.
You
I
said
have my own conversation.
I just want to be clear. Do you do all your production work, or you typically do all your production work? Do you typically do all your production work, or you do all your production work? I want to be sure that, you know, when you say typically, it means that, okay, most of the time I do my production work, but sometimes someone does it for me. Is that what you're saying?
Oh no, I do all my own production work at this time. At this time, I do.
So you wear many hats. Yeah,
yeah, a lot of hats.
The editor, the producer, the writer, the host, etc., etc.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So all the production work is done on. Yeah, I do all that myself.
Yeah. Before you started podcasting, was that like a skill you had, or was it because you started your podcast? That's what made you figure out how to do those stuff?
I figured it out all along the way. Yeah. I had no skills like that whatsoever when I started. I had never used any kind of creative design software online. Never done any audio or any video or anything like that. It was all figured out along the way, and learn as you go.
Yeah. It's good to, like, it's a skill that is really, really good. Apart from the fact that you're doing your podcast, tomorrow you could say, oh yeah, I can produce a show for this organization. Yeah, I've been running my podcast for 5 years, and you're like, yeah, sure, yeah, come take charge of the production, and yeah, I want us to look at the monetary aspect. Does the podcast make money?
I will say at this point, very little. I mean, I get a little money here and there, but for the most part, it's a mission-driven podcast. Okay. I've had opportunities to do things with with different forms of monetization, and it just didn't feel like a fit, or whatever the deal was. And so up to this point, Wisdom, the money that it's made has been from people who are just, look, hey, we know that it costs a lot of money to do things like this, so here's a few bucks here and there, but it up to this point, to be quite honest, I'm a lot further in the hole than I am above ground when it comes to monetization.
Yeah. So you get support and donations from listeners of your podcast once in a while.
Once in a while, yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's nice. That's nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. What would you say is like the major growth factor for your podcast?
The main, say that
What's
again?
the top 3 growth factors or channels for your podcast? What has made your podcast grow over the course of 5 years?
Over the course of 5 years, the main place where I get traffic for the podcast? Yeah. So, Apple Podcasts by far is the largest place that generates traffic for me, is Apple Podcasts. Spotify, I think, is number 2, and then I think number 3, it varies. It goes back and forth between like iHeartRadio and TuneIn, maybe. I think I can't remember. I haven't looked at the analytics in a while. But I know in more recent times, obviously, because I've been doing more with YouTube. I've been getting a lot of redirects from YouTube and the stuff that I've been doing on YouTube. But yeah, we get we get redirects from from Facebook, from Instagram, from X, formerly known as Twitter. I'll put clips out on those each week to try and get listeners. And then also I'm a part of a couple incredible organizations that typically put my work in their newsletters. And then there's a couple internet radio stations that broadcast my stuff each week. So.
Oh, okay. If you were to recommend ways to grow a podcast, right, based on what has worked for you, right? Then I'm not just saying what everybody's saying, but based on what has worked for you, what would you recommend for someone just signing out? Hey, just a quick break. If you enjoying the insights so far and want even more behind the scenes ideas, inspiration, and tools for growing your own podcast, join my email list at mypodcaststory.com/join. That is mypodcaststory.com/join. You get access to helpful resources, exclusive updates, and the kind of stuff I only share with my email subscribers. Whether you're starting out or already podcasting, there's something valuable waiting for you. Head over to mypodcaststory.com/join and subscribe. Now, back to the episode.
So I would, the more, obviously, the more, if you're doing a guest-based podcast, the more you can get your guests to promote your product or your stuff through their circle of influence, that's fantastic. Otherwise, short form video content associated with your podcast tends to boost numbers a lot more quickly than most things, I think. If you can put together short form video clips that people can look at and little bite-sized pieces and say, oh, okay, well, that's interesting, then have a link back to your full episode. A lot of times, if from my personal experience, Wisdom, what I've seen is if I post the whole podcast episode through like YouTube or something like that, it does not do as well as some of the short form content. Posting transcripts for the episode along with your show notes in your particular website, I think does a lot for SEO engagement. So Anybody who's not familiar with it, would be search engine optimization, right? So a full transcript of the episode, and there's different AI platforms that can generate a full transcript of your episode with timestamps like that. That gives people an opportunity. Not only does it let the search algorithms online find content that people are looking for, but it also gives people the opportunity to say, "Oh, okay, there was a particular thing that I heard in this, or somebody recommended this because of this particular phrase or this particular thing." So the transcripts have been very important in my experience.
Oh, you did mention that your podcast gets broadcasted on internet radios. Can you tell us how that arrangement came about?
That was just from people reaching out to me and said, "Hey, we've got a half hour each week that we want to fill up this particular spot. Can we broadcast your show during this time slot on our radio or on our internet radio station?" And I wasn't opposed to it because, again, I'm a very mission driven style person. So I figured the more people listening, the better. And so yeah, just allowed them to broadcast it on their internet radio station. And
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
I noticed you did mention that you get guests on the podcast and all that. I'd love for you to kind of like walk us through how you get guests and where you get guests, and probably how does the idea work for you? Is it that you find an idea of, okay, I'm going to talk about this on my episode, who's the guest I should get, or it's more like, oh, I have seen this guest, what should we talk about?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Wisdom. I a lot of the times the people that I'm looking for, I will see something that they wrote, or see something see maybe a television interview that they did, or see that they were writing about a particular subject, or things like that, right? I see that they've been somehow engaged in a message that I want to either highlight or talk about on my podcast. So I will reach out to them or their publicist or whatever, and say, "Hey, this is a conversation that I would like to have based on this particular thing that I saw this particular person doing, and if we could, I'd like to get something set up to record an interview at some point in the coming days." That's the long and the short of it. Now, again, to your point, I mean, there's times where I'd be like, "Oh, okay, I've got a particular idea of something that I want to talk about," so I'll kind of go through my mental Rolodex of who I know talks about certain things. So I'll go through and I'll look at their feed history on Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn or something like that, and say, "Oh, okay, yep, here, and here they were talking about this particular thing. I think this would make for a great episode, a great conversation." So I'll reach out to them based on that. But a lot of times it's just by going through, searching the internet for things within my niche, right? My genre, and saying, "Oh, okay, this person, and this person would probably be great guests based on these things that they've done recently." So I'm going to reach out to them and see if I can get something set up.
Okay. If you were to say if you were to create a number which we'll call the duration of from reach out to finally having them show up for the recording, how long would you say it take? Okay, from, oh, I have an idea, I want to reach out to this guest about this so we can discuss this, and then you reach out to them, and plus they get back to you, plus the follow-up, the schedule meeting, and then eventually they book a time, and then eventually they show up and you're having a conversation. How long does this take? Is it 6 months, 8 months, 1 year?
I mean, I've seen it take as long as I've had it happen in as short as a few days to as long as a handful of months. If somebody, I guess if somebody kind of pushes me off to, upwards of a year or whatever, then I'm like, okay, well, maybe they don't really want to be part of this and whatever. So, but I would say on average, a few weeks to a couple months
Yeah.
uh, is what that process takes.
Mm.
On average. I mean, there's some that take longer, especially like I said, I've had some very, very high profile guests on my podcast, and sometimes those do take quite a bit longer. But I like I said, I've seen it happen within a couple days, and but I would say somewhere on average between a couple weeks and a couple months.
Yeah, your podcast is peculiar in that sometimes you do have conversations with the popular I don't know, I don't want to use the word celebrity, but those that are like popular compare, and then there are
Yeah, big time
yeah,
influencers and thought leaders.
big time influence. So from the perspective of a podcaster, when the times when you have those persons on an episode, does it affect or influence the typical average downloads, or is it that it shoots up when you have them on the podcast, or it's just nothing changes?
So that goes to something that I said earlier. If they are willing to, typically if they're willing to share it and reshare it through their circle of influence, it definitely has an effect on the number of listens, the number of downloads. But a lot of times, if it's somebody just because they got a big name and they can have a big name and a great message, but if they don't share it with their circle of influence, sometimes, I mean, you'll see a bump, but not necessarily a huge bump. A lot of times it's just the same, your faithful listeners and things like that.
Okay, so I mean, it does affect, well, only if they choose to share your podcast. Other than that, nothing really changes.
I would say that's fairly accurate. Yes. Yep.
Yeah, well, you've been podcasting. What would you say some of the personal benefits the podcast has had on you, right? And of course, I'm not talking about money, right? like how has podcasting worked on you over the course of 5 years?
Yeah. So again, I'll go back to something I said earlier. I've learned so much from doing this. Whether it's just the skill set that I've picked up from doing the podcast itself, the technical skills, learning how to produce a podcast, learning how to use the different software and hardware, microphones, stuff like that, adjust gains, adjust volumes, recording, all that. That's a huge, I think, a huge benefit there. But more than that wisdom, it's the wisdom going to the name you use here, right? Is there's so much wisdom to be gained in having conversations with people from a wide variety of different backgrounds. I've had conversations with people on nearly every continent, in dozens of countries, through doing this podcast. Um, so whether it be cultural diversity, ethnic diversity, mindset diversity, uh, ideology diversity, or ideological diversity, uh, I've had just incredible conversations with people from all kinds of different backgrounds, and it's been truly one of the great honors of my life to be able to learn from each of those people, learn a little bit about their background, how they came to do what they do, why they think and believe what they think and believe. And so yeah, as far as a personal benefit, the biggest benefit is learning from all the different people that I've had the opportunity to interview through my podcast journey.
Most podcast hosts that I interview, they point out podcasting as a networking tool, right? So now the question is, for the 5 years you've been podcasting, have you had a podcast bestie or made a friend from podcasting?
Have I made friends through podcasting? Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Can you tell?
Well, I made one today, Wisdom. You and I are friends now, right?
Yeah.
We doing this, having these conversations. I've made some incredible friends. I've developed some of the best friendships of my life through doing this podcast.
About some of them?
Yeah, sure. So one of the greatest relationships that I have built through this podcast is not just with one person, but with an organization called Braver Angels. Braver Angels is an incredible organization. It's the largest grassroots organization in the United States, working towards bridging the divide, working towards civic renewal. It's made up of some of the best people that I've ever got to encounter in my life, and through that organization, I've made incredible friendships with countless people that are trying to better the world in which we live. So whether it be the founders of Braver Angels, David Lapp, David Blankenhorn, Bill Doherty, or some of the great leaders in that organization, John Wood Jr., Monica Guzman, just those friendships have been monumental in my life. And then outside the Braver Angels organization, I now sit on the board of advisors for another incredible organization called the Pro-Human Foundation, put together by a civil rights icon by the name of Daryl Davis, somebody who's done incredible work in the race relations and civil rights space, along with Brian Bartney and Letitia Kim. Just incredible people that I've had the opportunity to work with. And then I've made friends in the public health space. I've made friends across the spectrum of the political health divide as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. The former National Institutes of Health Director, Dr. Francis Collins, is now a good friend of mine. The current National Institutes of Health Director, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, another great friend of mine. Dr. Johnny Anides, Dr. Marty McCary, all of these people are people that I've had the opportunity to have conversations with and learn about and learn from, and bridge some of the most monumental divides of our lifetime, Wisdom. And it's been incredible. So whether it be doctors, journalists, authors, life coaches, people in the volunteer space, business leaders, thought leaders. I've made so many incredible friendships over the course of my time doing this podcast that it just, I don't have enough time to count all my blessings that have come from doing this thing. And I do it because I get an opportunity to try and fix a world that I didn't break. And I've made incredible friendships doing it.
Now it's about looking to the future. What are some things, some projects, or ideas, or maybe projections you want to work on regarding the podcast or related to the podcast that you, if you don't mind sharing with us? Can you hear?
Yeah. Yeah, I can hear. So as far as what I plan to do in the future and what I continue to plan to do, I'm going to continue doing this work in the depolarization space, trying to bridge divides, trying to help people work through contentious issues and do it in a non-contentious way. The plan is to continue on that path and continue building these friendships, building these relationships. Yeah, there's just going to be a lot more of that. A lot more of what I've been doing and expanding upon it and building out that network.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I'd love to. I'm invested in this story, and I'd love to follow along.
Well, please follow along and spread the word. Anything we can do to put out that message, wisdom that we're all human beings. We all got, we get one go around on this rock we call Earth, and there's and then we all have to deal with a lot of issues in our lives that are outside of our control. It's not about what happens to us, but how we react to it that makes the big difference. And as long as we know that, and as long as we work through that internally, we can deal with a lot of those external factors that happen around us. So if we work through our problems in that way, saying, you know what, I'm not going to allow those things outside of my control to control me. I'm going to take the personal responsibility to respond to things in the right way. And then I'm going to work through things with my people within my circle of influence to make this world a better place. We're all going to get by in a lot better way every day from now and moving forward.
What's one piece of advice you wish someone had given to you when you started podcasting?
When I started podcasting, advice somebody I would, yeah, I would definitely say, don't focus on the day-to-day numbers. Focus on the mission. If you've got an idea, if you've got something that you believe in up here and right here, just focus, do it, work your mission, and great things will happen.
Wow. Okay. So that's the advice you wish someone had given you when it's time.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Looking back at you're in the podcasting industry and you see some other podcasters, some start, some quit. What is like the biggest mistake you notice that they make that you just, if you had the opportunity to talk to them, which you do have now, what would you tell the younger podcasters of today?
Yeah, I like I said, I think as long as the message is good, everything else will follow along. Not everything has to be perfect. Don't wait for everything to be perfect to get started. And yeah, I think that's cool.
Yeah, thank you so much, Wilk, for sharing your podcast story with us, and thank you for this lovely chat. Where can listeners
I appreciate it.
Where can listeners learn more about you and what you do?
Everybody can learn more about me and what I do at DerateTheHate.com. So that's Derate, DERATE, thehate.com. You can also find me at wilksworld.com or wilksopinion.com. And it's Wilk like milk, MILK. So Wilk, WILK. Wilksworld.com, DerateTheHate.com. That's where you can find me, and they'll learn just about everything they need to do there, or just Google Wilk Wilkinson. You'll find me there.
Yeah, thank you once again. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Wisdom. I appreciate it.
That's it for today's episode of my podcast story. I am Wisdom Okonkwo, and I hope this conversation sparked new ideas and gave you a deeper look into the heart of podcasting. If you've loved this episode, consider supporting the show by buying me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/wisdomhq. Every bit helps keep the stories going. And hey, don't forget to follow, rate, and share this podcast with another podcaster or creator who would find it helpful. Thanks again for listening, and I'll catch you in the next episode.